Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Ahoyerno. I strongly believe that equality is the null position in any debate. If you argue for inequality, the burden of proof rests on you, and unless your case is convincing, more equality stands as the default position. Communism is a case in point because that's the one topic where I am convinced by the evidence that more equality isn't necessarily a good thing. Thoughts on equality as the null position? I think that's a good position, all things being equal. See what I did there? I think the problem when it comes to communism, and again, as I said in my answer to the question about this last week, I am by no means an expert on communism or the most well-read person on the subject. I think the problem comes down to money. When you have an economic system that relies on there being controlled amounts of certain amounts of supply and demand, where it relies on there being finite amounts of things in order to assign value to them. I think equality doesn't really work as well. I think in an economic system where where everything is transactional, you can't have perfect equality, because if you have perfect equality and everybody has exactly the same amount of everything, then it doesn't really work. So in an economic system where there's money involved, I think you don't necessarily want to strive for equality, but you want to strive for a situation where everybody has their basic needs met. And then if people have more than they need, if there are, incredibly wealthy people who have far more than they could ever need, it's not as big of a problem, because the people down at the bottom of the scale may not have abundance, but they have everything that they need. They won't have to worry about starving. They won't have to worry about not having a place to live. Their basic needs will be met. And when you can get that kind of a floor in place, where people have a basic level of income, for instance, that will allow them to pay their bills and take care of all of their needs, and they won't have to worry about how are they going to survive, then you can have a little bit more inequality in terms of wealth, in terms of income, because you won't have to worry about the people at the bottom being crushed. A. Asante. Hey Steve, in last week's video you were talking about communism failing every time and how communist states become dictatorships, i.e. Cuba, the Soviet Union, China, etc. But a lot of those countries only became communist because of Western aggression. For example, both Ho Chi Minh and Fidel Castro weren't communist in the beginning until the US denied their friendship. Most third world countries feel they need protection from the United States, especially during the Cold War, and since the Soviet Union was the only country that could really challenge the United States, they felt they had to adopt communism, much like the Soviet Union, or they see the US as a force of evil. So they want to be the exact opposite of that and shun democracy and look for a strong man to lead them. So my question is, do you feel it's wrong for third world countries or the rest of the world to feel this way about America? No, I actually don't. I don't blame other countries for viewing the US as aggressive or as an enemy. I mean, you have to look at how many times, just in the history of the 20th century, that the United States inserted itself in the affairs of other countries, sometimes for benevolent reasons, sometimes because we honestly thought we were doing a good thing, and sometimes because we were just trying to manipulate things to create what we hoped would be a situation that would be more to our advantage. And when you do that sort of thing, when you use your power and your influence and your military strength to meddle in the affairs of other people's countries, or to bring war and destruction to other people's countries, or destabilize their political systems, or all of the things that American agents have done throughout the years in Europe and the Middle East and Africa and Asia, I mean, it's hard to say we don't deserve that reputation. We can hide behind our good intentions and say, oh, we were just trying to bring democracy to people, or we were just trying to stabilize the region, or we were just trying to form alliances with people that we thought we could depend on. That's nice, but from the ground level, if you're just a person living in one of those countries and you see the United States as a meddler, as an invader, as an attacker, as the person responsible for getting rid of your government, or blowing up a hospital down the street, or arming a hostile force that is now attacking your country, it's really difficult to argue with that person and say, yes, but the United States is ultimately a good thing. Lucas Stefaniak. Hi, Steve. What would you attribute your facility with writing as opposed to other subjects like astronomy? Does English studies require a lot of memorization? History was the hardest high school subject for me, as I couldn't remember all the facts. High school physics, on the other hand, is a subject where you can ground some understanding in intuition, and from that you can mathematically derive things you've forgotten. It doesn't get any easier than that, does it? Well, maybe for you. I mean, I always had trouble with more advanced science, and I think it's because of the math. I've just never had a really strong head for math. I think if you can get a handle on math and you can understand math in a really intuitive way, so you just get it, then you're off to the races. And it's never come that easily to me. It's something about the way my brain works. I don't know if it's genetic or if it's derived from environment, or if there's some point in your development where that kind of thing just sort of becomes baked in. But as long as I can remember, I have always had much more of a head for words and for speech and for writing and communication than I have for math and numbers. And that's unfortunate, because if you don't have a strong grasp of math, it's very limiting as far as moving up and having higher levels of understanding and education in really hard science. So, I mean, I guess the answer is it's the way my brain works. I don't know why my brain works that way. I don't know what I can attribute it to. But when I look at words, when I look at language, it's particularly my language, I've never shown any great facility to learning another language. I'm actually really terrible at languages other than English. I think I'm doomed to be a monoglot. But as far as my native tongue, English, it's just always made sense to me. Even when it came to learning the more technical aspects, learning grammar and syntax and things like that, it just makes sense. Like, I just look at it and it makes sense, and I know how to use it, and I know what to do with it. It just comes naturally to me. That's the only way I can really explain it. And what do I attribute that facility to? I mean, I don't know, but it's been with me for as long as I can remember. I've always been drawn to writing and to speaking, to communicating, to expressing ideas verbally. It's just something that I've always been decent at. And math, on the other hand, is something that I've always been pretty terrible at. Dragonface13, this might sound like a weird question, but Steve, what accent do you have? I'm a student of English linguistics, and we've been learning about different varieties of English lately. I hope this won't offend you in any way, but speaking as a non-native speaker of English, I find it quite difficult to distinguish between different types of American English, with a few notable exceptions, such as Southern American English, New York English, etc. It just all kinda sounds the same to me. Does your part of the States have a particularly distinctive accent? Just curious. People here in Western Maryland, to my ear anyway, tend to speak with kind of a combination of an Appalachian accent, which is also sometimes called mountain talk, and a Baltimore accent. And I know with my own family, my father in particular, who was probably the most directly influential on the way I speak, he really seems like a combination of an Appalachian accent and a Baltimore accent. And the Appalachian accent, in terms of the accent itself, in terms of pronunciation, not so much in terms of vocabulary, because there's an Appalachian dialect, and vocabulary is a very large part of that. And people in this area don't typically use or exhibit the Appalachian dialect in terms of vocabulary, but in terms of pronunciation, in terms of drawl, there's very much an Appalachian influence. And then also the Baltimore accent. And again, it's kind of the same thing. Like the Baltimore accent, the Baltimore dialect has certain distinctive vocabulary, you know, and people around here don't really exhibit that all that often. But there is a way of pronouncing words, a way of speaking that is typical of what's called the Baltimore accent that is very much apparent in my region, in Western Maryland, where I've lived my whole life. And it's, like I say, it's sort of a combination of that. It's sort of a light Appalachian accent mixed with a Baltimore accent, and you mush that together, and that's what you have with people from Western Maryland. Skull Maris, how do you feel about the fact that some theaters will be holding special screenings of Wonder Woman where no men will be admitted? I am about as far from an MRA as you can get, but it still feels like discrimination to me, and thus seems wrong even if it is for the benefit of a traditionally underprivileged group. I don't really see how that is discriminatory unless the theater is saying men are not allowed to see the movie in this theater at all. You know, I assume that the Wonder Woman women's only screening will be taking place in the same theater that they will later be showing the movie for more open screening. So you can't really say separate but equal. You can't say, well, the women get to see the movie in the nice theater and the men have to see the movie in the shitty theater. It's all the same theater. It's just a particular private event focused on letting women come to see the movie in the company of other women, because it is kind of a big cultural event for a lot of women, especially a lot of women in the nerd community and the superhero fandom community, to finally have a big mainstream superhero film that not only is about a character who is a woman but was directed by a woman. Like, it's kind of a big deal. You know, I totally get why women who are superhero fans and comic book fans and just women in general are really excited about it and would like to share that moment with their fellow women. And I don't really see what the problem is. My local theater here regularly has private screenings that are focused on particular segments of the audience. You know, one of the most popular ones they have is special screenings that are set aside for parents with young children, so that people who ordinarily might be shy about bringing their kids to the theater because they don't want their young children to disturb, you know, the other moviegoers, they can go see one of these screenings, and they know that everybody else who's there will also have their young kids with them, and they won't have to worry about causing a scene, because that's what it's for. It's there for parents with young children to go see. And I've never heard anybody complain about that. I've never heard a childless person come out and say, this is discrimination. How dare they say that just because I don't have children, I can't go see that screening of the movie. I think if someone said that, most people would think that was a little silly. And that's what I think about people objecting to the Wonder Woman woman's only screenings at the Alamo. I think it's silly. I think just go see another show of the movie. Especially a movie like this that is a major wide release. It's going to be showing on thousands of screens all over the country. If you're a man and you're upset that you can't get into the women's only screening of Wonder Woman, and you do actually want to see the movie, just buy a ticket to one of the dozens of other screenings. It's going to be okay. It's really not a big deal. It's fake outrage over nothing, which is most of what the MRAs do. That's their stock in trade, fake outrage over nothing, and that's exactly what this is. Dr. Babylon, Steve, do you think every atheist goes through a smug blowhard phase? If so, why do you think that is? If I see a young atheist going through her smug blowhard phase, do you have any tips for how to speed them through it, or at least prevent them from being stuck there permanently? How did you get past your smug blowhard phase? I'm glad that you think that I've gotten past it. That's a good sign. Yeah, I don't know if every atheist goes through that kind of a phase, but it certainly seems to be very popular. And I guess the best way to speed people through it is to remind them that they can still be wrong about stuff. And that just because they think they've gotten the correct answer to one question, which is whether or not gods exist, that doesn't mean that they have figured out everything. And it doesn't mean that they can't still be wrong about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of humility and modesty that is required for being a skeptical person, for being an open-minded person. You have to be willing to admit that you could be wrong about stuff. And just because you are an atheist and you've figured it out from your perspective that, you know, religion is false and there is no God and all of these beliefs are false, that doesn't make you smarter than anybody else. That doesn't make you more logical or rational than anybody else. It doesn't make you better than anybody else. It doesn't make your reasoning more reliable. All of these little flattering things that young atheists sort of tell themselves, and that I used to tell myself. It's just not true, and you're setting yourself up for a fall. You're putting yourself in a trap where you're more biased in your own favor than you should be. So I think the best way to sort of speed people along is to just remind them that, you know, you're not, just because you figured out that religion is false, that doesn't mean that you're more rational or you're smarter or your brain is just better than other people's. You can still be wrong about a lot of stuff, and you need to have that humility and that open-mindedness to accept the fact that you still need to take things one step at a time and not just assume that if someone, especially a religious person, disagrees with you about something, that you're automatically right because you're the atheist. I think there's a lot of that going around. Mariusz Butrikovsky, how would you set the boundary between people actually interested in a conversation and just plainly spewing hate or trolling when it comes to discrimination? I'm asking because I've lately found myself trying to explain the issues, but most of the time giving up as soon as the other side starts spewing insults like feminazi or using other MRA or alt-right derogatory terms. I usually turn to sarcasm and ridiculing them if I find them having a history of sharing stuff like that on social media. I'm second-guessing myself a lot, though, wondering if I should just disengage or trying harder to get through. It seems like we draw the line at about the same place. If I see people being insulting or belligerent or just posting like standard anti-feminist MRA boilerplate stuff, then I just don't engage with them at all. And if I have been engaging with them up to that point, then I just disengage. Like, I don't bother getting into fights with people. I don't bother trying to be sarcastic or insult them or you know, give back what they've been giving to me in terms of being hostile and derogatory. I just disengage. I just leave. I mute them or block them if I'm on Twitter or YouTube or whatever. I think it's a waste of time. Once they start getting into that, you know, feminazi, MRA talk, once they start trying to start arguments with you about shit that shouldn't even be an argument, that should all be just settled arguments, like whether or not women are oppressed in the West and all these standard anti-feminist talking points that they love to piss and moan about, I just step away. I just withdraw from the conversation because it's a waste of time to argue about stuff that shouldn't be up for debate at this point. And it's a waste of time to argue with someone who thinks that those things are debatable. At least it's a waste of my time. Maybe someone else can have better luck in getting through to them. But personally, I don't really care about getting through to one random person on Twitter or in a YouTube comment that is spewing absolute nonsense and just trying to get my attention, or once they have my attention, trying to keep my attention. So it sounds like we draw the line in the same place, but instead of turning to sarcasm when I realize that the person I'm talking to is a shithead, I just stop talking to them. That's my method. That's how I do it. It's not necessarily how you should do it, but that's how I do it. Crow Bro, hey Steve, I want to start making my own videos on YouTube. Any advice on getting eyeballs to my videos? Thanks. Well, sure, there are little tricks you can do. You can use Google Trends to try and keep track of what are the hot topics online at the moment, what are people searching for, what are people interested in seeing about, and you can make videos about that sort of thing. You can make videos about those topics and use those topics to put keywords in your titles and your description and your video tags, and that will make it more likely that people searching for those topics will find your video and watch it. But in the long term, the best thing you can do is to just make good content that is reflective of who you are, because who you are is the one thing that nobody else can copy. You will probably not invent a new format of video. You'll probably, whatever kind of video you do, whether it's commentary or a vlog or comedy skits or animation or dramatic stuff or whatever you do in your videos, it will be something that superficially somebody else has already done. But if you can do it in a way that reflects who you are, your imagination, your personality, your priorities, your perspective, if it is a reflection of you and your genuine self, then it will be unique. And if you can find a way to do that consistently with a high level of quality, maybe with a little bit of wit, with a little bit of panache, then I think you have a shot. I think you can gain an audience. You might not gain a very big audience at first. You might get lucky and you'll gain a huge audience right away. Some people have been very lucky. But it's more likely that you'll have to grind it out for a while. You'll have to keep making videos. You'll have to gather views and subscribers slowly. But eventually, if you keep at it and you continue to improve as you go, then you'll have an audience that will appreciate what you do. And maybe it'll turn out to be a large audience. And that would be wonderful. But that's really the only advice that I can give you. Other than this bit of advice that I'm going to give you right now, which is stick around, because things are about to go a lot quicker from this point on, because it's time for the lightning round. Matt Machado, hey Steve, if you're ever in the Richmond, Virginia area, would you let me buy you a beer? I'm not talking about cheap swill either. Maybe something from the myriad of breweries that have popped up in the last 6-7 years. Yes, Matt, I hereby grant you permission to buy me a beer. You may buy me a beer. Yes, that would be awesome, actually, if I ever find myself in the Richmond area. Lucas Hackett, Steve, the choice is yours. You can either go with this or you can go with that. Take your pick. I'm going to go with this because this is where it's at. Yes, it's a Black Sheep reference, I thought of. Yes, it is a Black Sheep reference. Avrisatos, my question to you is if you've been to the new African American Museum that opened up. I got a flyer about it in the mail a few months ago and wasn't sure if it was worth the incredibly difficult trip for me. I have not been. I really want to go. I think the next time I find myself in DC for like a museum trip, I'm definitely going to make that my first stop. I want to go not only for the museum itself and the exhibits. I think it would be incredibly educational and important for me to go and see it. But also, I hear wonderful things about the Sweet Home Cafe. I would love to try the Sweet Home Cafe. So yes, I haven't been yet, but I am definitely going to go. And I would say it would probably be worth it if you went to, if you're thinking about it. Der Wunderbar Bar. I have movies that I don't watch that often because they are so emotionally draining. Movies such as Schindler's List and Seven. Do you have any such movies that you like but just have to wait a period of time before you watch them again? Ooh, Dancer in the Dark. Dancer in the Dark is one of the only movies I've ever watched where I actually had a pit in my stomach at the end of it. Like I was physically affected by it. I was just drained and devastated at the end of that movie. And I think I've actually only ever watched it once. I don't know if I would want to watch it again because it was a brilliant movie. I loved it. It was a great film, but it was so wrenching that I don't know if I would want to watch it again, but that's definitely at the top of my list. Kevin Logan, why do Americans insist on misspelling shit? It's to spite Brits. It's just to spite you guys. We broke away. We had the revolution. We formed our own country, and even though we speak the same language, we said we're going to do it different. We're going to make little tiny changes in the way we use our language. We're going to spell shit different. We're going to come up with some new idioms and different phrases, just to say that we're speaking English, but we're speaking American English. We ain't speaking no kings and queens English. That's the main thing. It's just to fuck with you all. Lonely Wolf 1980, even though I don't follow an organized religion, I still couldn't notice that my astrological planets read fully were way too accurate. The 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water seem to be telling about our personalities. Does atheism preclude the interest in other mystical quests like astrological analysis, Eastern Buddhist philosophies, contemplating the cosmos, eternity, and other mysteries of the universe? Well, I suppose technically it doesn't. Interpreted in the most narrow way, atheism just means not believing in God. So I suppose you could be an atheist and also find some value in your horoscope or some other mystical thing. It's just that the same line of thought that leads to the conclusion that God doesn't exist also, for most people, leads to the conclusion that astrology is horseshit and there's no such thing as the supernatural or mysticism or anything like that. The same line of thinking leads you to the same conclusion with that other stuff. So most atheists also disbelieve the supernatural in general, not just the existence of gods. But technically, I suppose you could. You could be an atheist and still, believe that there's some value in your horoscope if you have some reason for that. It's not really my deal. I don't really see that, but more power to you. Joe McClory, as part of your work, you read apologetics books, follow the news, monitor comments on YouTube and Twitter. So I wonder what sort of self-care do you do to try and counteract all of the negativity you subject yourself to in your chosen profession? Do you schedule time for it in your work week, or do you just take a break from writing or filming when you feel too stressed or angry? I mean, I watch a lot of Star Trek. I hang out with my wife. I pet my cat. I do a lot of things away from the computer and away from the internet to sort of keep a balance and to not get too lost in all of this stuff. And also the work itself, like doing what I'm doing right now, just shooting a video, that has always been joyful to me. That has always been something that I have enjoyed greatly. So, I mean, sometimes the research can be stressful. Sometimes the management can be a little annoying, but the actual work, the actual making of the videos has always been a lot of fun to me, so that helps a lot too. Harry Ray, lightning round question. Could you please shave your mustache, leaving only the middle part, looking like a map of Australia? No, I'm not really going to do that, but maybe we can Photoshop something for you. Here, let's see. Now, what do you think of that? I don't know. I can kind of see the Australia thing. Yeah. Maybe. I'm not saying it's perfect, but, you know, there you go. Use your imagination. Samuel Sturgill. Steve, what's your thoughts on the death of Jack T. Chick? Will you miss him? No. No, I won't miss Jack Chick at all. Johnny the Wolf. Really, Steve? You do not even watch anti-feminists when they are saying something actually sensible for a change? No, I don't think that sensible things are in such short supply. I mean, that's like saying, really, Steve, you don't eat at the restaurant that poisons most of its customers? Because, I mean, every once in a while they don't poison someone. Every 100th meal to come out of that rancid kitchen is actually pretty good, or at least safe to eat. So I don't think it's fair to write off the restaurant completely. I mean, there's other places to eat, you know? That's it. That's the last question. It's time now for the shout out, and it is June, which means that it is Pride Month. And in honor of Pride Month, all of my shout outs on You Had to Ask this month will be directed at LGBTQ plus advocacy groups. And the first shout out for Pride Month 2017 goes to a wonderful organization that focuses on LGBTQ interests within the Black community. The shout out goes to the National Black Justice Coalition, an organization that focuses on empowering Black LGBTQ people. A wonderful goal, a wonderful organization. Unfortunately, LGBTQ folk in the Black community have to face being a minority within a minority. And they have the challenges not only faced by folks who are Black in our culture, but also folks who are LGBTQ in our culture. And they have to deal not only with homophobia in general, but also, unfortunately, homophobia, transphobia, etc. within the Black community, which is unfortunately still a problem in many places. So it's really nice that there are organizations like the National Black Justice Coalition to help people out, to empower people, to raise awareness, to create communities that are more tolerant and accepting and equal for LGBTQ folks who are part of the Black community. If you think that this is a good organization, if you want to learn more and help support their work, you can go to their website at nbjc.org. That's the shout out, a really terrific organization to kick off Pride Month, the National Black Justice Coalition. I also want to remind you, as always, to check out the Lemme Listen family of podcasts. These are podcasts that are all created by my very good friend Jason Harding. There's a whole bunch of awesome Lemme Listen podcasts. There's Lemme Finish, there's American Monsters, Filmtastic Voyage, 3 for Adventure, Cinetific, and of course, my personal favorite, because it's the one that I'm actually on, Late Seating, the belated movie review podcast co-hosted by Jason and me, where we take a fresh look at a film that has a certain reputation of either being a great film or a terrible film. We give it a fresh review, we make fun of it for your listening pleasure, and we decide whether it deserves whatever reputation it has. You can listen to our most recent episode, which went up last week, which is a review of Showgirls. Yeah, we watched Showgirls on purpose, and then we made a podcast about it, and you can listen to it. And I hope you do, because otherwise we watched Showgirls for nothing, and I just don't think I want to face that. I want to at least say that it was for something. So go listen to the episode about Showgirls if you haven't already. And you can also get ready for our next episode, which we're recording this weekend and will go up next week, which will be about the original The Fast and the Furious. So check out The Fast and the Furious if you haven't watched it for a while, so you can get all the jokes and know what we're talking about on the next episode of Late Seating. And for now, you can listen to all of the past episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the excellent Lemme Listen podcasts by going to lemmelistenpodcast.com. That's it, folks. I am done. I am out of here for another week. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please, please, please leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. In order for me to do this, you have to ask. So leave a comment on this video asking me your question for the next You Had to Ask video. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can. And until next time, take care, everybody. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel. And I really wish that you would. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.